This is the Beyond Barriers Unscripted Podcast, episode 27.
Because now I'm not the blind person. I'm just me. I'm just Sylvia who's there doing my job.
Hello and welcome to the show. In this episode, Brandie and I are joined by Sylvia Stinson Perez. Now, Sylvia is one of the co-hosts of the Bold Blind Beauty On Air podcast. She joins us in this unscripted conversation recorded late November 2021 and shares about her experience serving those in the BVI community. Before we get started, if you enjoy the show, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share with a friend. If you have any questions or comments or just want to reach out and say hi to Brandie or myself, you can email us at bb.unscripted@gmail.com. And now our conversation with Sylvia. Thanks for joining us, Sylvia. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I can. I guess I'll start from the beginning. I was born a bunch of years ago, but not too many. And I grew up in a very small town, and fairly soon after my birth, my parents realized that I wasn't tracking visually, and so they took me to the doctor, and I was diagnosed as legally blind very early on. They never actually gave me a diagnosis, though, which is very strange, and went to regular public school. I did have a teacher of the visually impaired, but minimal assistance was provided. It's interesting because I went through school without ever being able to see the board, but I could read my textbooks, etc. So I could see close up, but nothing with distance. And then I went on to college and got a degree in social work, met my husband in school, moved down to Miami, and started looking for a job. And that's when the blindness factor became really, I guess, emphatic in my life, is that I started to understand, wow, there is this thing called discrimination, because I got questions like, how would you do this job? You can't see well enough to do this job. And at that point, I could still see what I consider to be fairly well. I was not even at that point using a cane. And so I really started to understand, wow, this is going to have an impact on my life. I honestly did not think before that there would ever be any impact on my life. And so I ended up going to the Lighthouse to get a little bit of computer training, and they offered me a job. And I guess that really became a career for me. I did leave for about 5 years. I had a baby and wanted to do something different. And then one day I happened to buy the Lighthouse to visit, and they wooed me back in with another job to start at that time, the transition program. So the pre-ETs, working with teens this is way back in like 2003. And I never have left the field since then and have loved it. I went on in 2008 to run a Lighthouse for the Blind in the Pasco, Hernando, and Citrus area of Florida, so near Tampa Bay. And then a couple of years ago, went on to Mississippi State to work there. And then now a couple months ago, went to work at AFB. And on the personal side, I am married, and we have a daughter who's a almost college graduate. I have lots of fun hobbies that I love. I think I would say that I have never, ever let my blindness stop me. And by the way, I forgot to say that eventually I was diagnosed with RP and have lost all of my vision with just a little bit of light perception left. So that's a long way to come about who is Sylvia Stinson Perez.
Would you consider yourself being mainstreamed in school?
I was completely mainstreamed.
how do you think that affected, you said something earlier that I could totally relate to. I've had low vision my entire life, and I've never been able to see the board without going up, really close. And I've always, I've wondered later in life, it's like, how did I learn how to read visually? Because if I can get close enough, I can read just fine. But when you were talking about that, it made me remember that. Can you talk about being mainstreamed? Because things have changed in schools a lot.
Yeah. So I could stand on top of the board and not see the board. There's something about the lack of contrast, but I could read very small print really close up, but nothing related to that board. I will say that the skill that I developed was an incredible ability to listen well and take in information. And I think that has actually been a huge benefit for me.
I think in the type of services you provide, as well as Bold Blind Beauty and what you all talk about, I think that probably serves you well. It gives you that ability to empathize with other folks. Would you agree?
I will say that having worked in this field for many years, I've seen hundreds, if maybe not thousands, of people who are on their blindness journey or their low vision journey. And I've never met two people who were alike. And some have had a much more challenging time than others. And I think I have really learned to try to meet people where they are and to really understand that blindness is just one thing going on with people, and all of those other things have a significant impact on their ability to accept and adjust to that vision loss. But the important thing is that I always tell everyone, every single person, we all have challenges. Every single one, every single person in the world has challenges. Blindness is a huge challenge, and especially those who I think experience, acute vision loss suddenly. That's traumatizing. But we all have the ability to figure out how to overcome that as well. And having a good support system is a really helpful thing, and not everybody has that. And so remembering that and helping people along that journey, I think, has been a true privilege in my life. And I've seen some miraculous things happen with people where they were able to accept that vision loss, and really even, and I'm sure you guys have seen this, is that it's been a positive, life-changing experience for some people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that I was so excited about having you come on the podcast, I've been following Bold Blind Beauty for so long. And when I listened to the first podcast and you were doing your introductions and everything, and I really related to all of you. All three of you ladies have such different stories, and you bring something different to the table. And it's almost like hanging out, having, a coffee with girlfriends. Can you talk more about your podcast and what you do together, what your mission is?
Sure. So it's really interesting to me that I have to tell you, and this is real authentic, is that growing up, I felt like an ugly alien. Like I was really fairly ostracized by my peers. And I know that many youth go through that. And so even, over my career, being able to work with youth, and even just, it's just amazing that. And then now I look back all these years and the experience that I had. And if only you knew what you knew later when you were going through that, it's so hard. And so when I heard about Bold Blind Beauty, I have to say to you that honestly, I thought back to that I thought I was not beautiful. There was nothing about me that was beautiful. And I always wanted to be beautiful and to be considered that. And so actually my first connection with Stephanie McCoy, I met her in January of 2020. And I heard about Bold Blind Beauty and I said, oh my gosh, I would love to write blog posts. And my very first blog post was auditioning for Bold Blind Beauty, because I felt like I was always trying to audition to be a bold, blind, and beautiful person. And coming to understand that beauty isn't just physical beauty, that it's so much deeper than that. But that physical part counts too. And helping other people. I think that the podcast and the blog, the content stuff is so important to help people realize that they can be confident in themselves, that they can be their authentic self. And that is bold, that is beautiful. And so the podcast, Bold Blind Beauty on A.I.R for accessibility, inclusion, and representation, really is our way to help people really see that. I mean, I think Stephanie and Nazarene will say slightly different things than I'll say, but for me, it's that getting out there and helping the world see that here we are, just these three blind girls. Girls, middle-aged women. We're these three middle-aged women who are just being our authentic self, and that there's beauty in that. And so that so much is what it represents for me.
And you can feel it and see it and hear it when the three of you are together and with your guests. It is so clear. And I think Brandie and I can both feel the same way, having both grown up in that same world where we just felt, I felt like the ugly duckling with my big thick lenses and one foot in the sighted world and one in the blind world, and not quite sure how to navigate either one.
Yeah, it's hard. But the thing is that to realize that there is an other side to that, and that things do change. And a lot of the reason they change is that you yourself change and you yourself become more confident and more bold. And that once you can really accept that, hey, this is who I am. And you know what? This is good. I'm cool. Other people might not think so, but at least I think so most days. And a few other people might think so. And eventually maybe more people will think so. And it's really funny because now I'm like not quite 35 years out of high school. And all those people from high school who ostracized me now are like, think I'm the bomb on social media. And I've even connected with people and they're like, they think I'm the bomb.
There you go.
So
did you have any mentors during your blindness journey?
So not so much growing up, for sure. I mean, my mentors, I would say my dad was a huge mentor for me. He never let me get away with anything. You got to try everything. You got to get out there and, push yourself, be determined, etc. My dad taught me real grit, that determination. But then I will tell you that when I really started, when I was there in my early 20s and started to realize, wow, this thing called blindness is really going to have an impact on my life, I knew immediately I need to have some mentors. And I had very little exposure to anyone who was blind. And as I said, I went over to the Lighthouse and I I did find several mentors, and they were, different people of different ages, different experiences. And I was able to say, wow, this person, they're doing it. They're living their life. They're successfully working. They're this, and I was truly blessed. And then I will say that after that, I always sought out mentors, both official, formal mentors who I met with on a regular basis, and informal mentors. There would be people who I just said, wow, I want to be like them. And it might not be all of them, is that I want to have that one quality like them. And I would make efforts to spend time with them and say, how did you do that? How did you develop that skill, or that even that character quality? And so I have always believed strongly in mentors.
Can you talk about, many of us, as we get older, we've been through different chapters in our lives, maybe different careers, different interests. Can you think about a time in your life when you've gone through that and maybe had some of those fears of the unknown, and how you walked through that? Was it through mentorship? Was it just through faith? Was it just taking the next step?
Well, that's a really interesting question. And I had a whole conversation with someone about this the other day. So it's interesting. I've had several, I would call major, I don't know, career change is not the right word, because I've always been in the blindness field, but several big job changes, including very recently. So my first big one was accepting, the role, even applying for the position as the CEO of an agency. That was a big, scary step. And then taking the position at the Mississippi State University National Research and Training Center on Blindness and Low Vision. That was a move out of state. And so someone said to me a couple of weeks ago, oh my gosh, you're so courageous. I'm going to say that it's not so much about courage. It's about doing the scary thing afraid. And I think faith has, my faith, it does play a really critical role in my life. But also, I think that that also pushing myself to that next level, to making that next contribution to the world of blindness, has also, and also just pushing myself to learn more and try new things has been a big part of me making some of those major decisions.
What keeps you driven in doing what you do? You connect with other people, you do meaningful work. And I'm sure there's a time in your life when that's become apparent. You have to accept it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think that my answer might be surprising, because I think oftentimes people say it is because of the difference I made. Do you know what keeps me driven, though? It's the things that still need to be done.
Mm.
It's what still needs to happen. We still have so many people who experience vision loss and isolate themselves. Mm-hmm. We still have so many people who think they can no longer work. We have youth who grow up thinking they can never go to college or never have a job or never get married, or all of those things. That is what keeps me driven. It's the things that still need to be done. And mostly it's about the attitudes. And I think that my passion has been more focused on helping the people who are experiencing vision loss develop that confidence, that acceptance, that boldness, that courage. That is what drives me.
Do you feel you hear all the time about people sometimes maybe they don't find the meaningfulness in their careers. Do you feel it's kind of a gift to know this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
It truly is. It truly is. And, so it's interesting to me that and you guys have been in the field and that this happens, is that oftentimes people who are blind are discouraged from being in our field. I think that's a huge loss, both for the field and for the individual, because who better to help people adjust to their vision loss? Who better to be that mentor than us? We've walked that path. We know how hard it is. We know the challenges. We know how to problem solve. Who better to be in our field than people who are blind? And it always makes me laugh, because if a sighted person is in the blindness field, they are, oh my gosh, how wonderful that you do that and you give back. But then if a blind person's in our field, oh, well, you couldn't get anything else.
Exactly. Oh, I hate that. No, I chose this profession.
That's just ignorant.
I chose to do what I do because I love it and I feel I can make a difference and I enjoy it.
Yes. Yes.
Not because this is the only thing I could do.
Right. We could do a bunch of more things, but we are great at this.
Exactly.
And by the way, we are probably way better at this than sighted people are. No offense.
Yes.
No offense to your sighted listeners.
No offense, anybody.
Hello.
But I'm actually very good at what I do. Thank you very much.
So it sounds like you kind of have the approach of, this isn't a disability that I'm interacting with. This is a person, body, mind, and spirit. Would you agree?
Yeah. So my blindness is a part of me, but it's not like this huge giant. I mean, it's a huge giant part of me, but I think once people get past that, I'm just me. And I'll tell you a little quick, little funny story. And we've all had these, and we probably all experienced this multiple times. I volunteer one night a week in a clothing giveaway program, a community service program, like for in a church, a local church. And I am the only person there who's blind. And initially, and I've been doing it for like 9 months. Initially, I think that, two of my sisters are also involved. So they're like, oh, no, we don't cut you any breaks. My family has never cut me breaks. I'm
Right
just
on.
me.
Yep.
I'm just me.
Yep.
Right on.
Yeah. And so they're like, well, no, it's no big deal. But then there's all these other people who come in, including some teenagers, etc. And I'm sure, I know this, I'm sure they're like, oh my gosh, she's sorting clothes, she's hanging clothes, we're moving around. This is, it's a fairly big operation going on here. And I'm sure they're like, how's this going to work out? Now, I have to say, in the past couple weeks, things have happened where, and I've heard my sister just start laughing because she's like, oh, you forgot she was blind. You totally forgot she was blind. And here it is. And that's the truth. They did. They're like, oh yeah, we forgot, because now I'm not the blind person. I'm just me. I'm just Sylvia, who's there doing my job. I don't know if that makes sense, but I mean, and I have those experiences a lot. And I think that one of the things I try to promote to people who are blind is get out there and do things, because we are the ones who we tell our story. We are the ones who the world needs to see. They need to see us out in those everyday situations. And it might feel awkward early. It might feel awkward for us early on. It might be awkward for them. But eventually we just become who we are. And that blindness is a thing, but it's not the biggest thing anymore.
If we don't create the narrative, they will. So
that's perfect. Yes.
We have to start the conversation. Otherwise they'll just make it up as they go.
And it's life-changing for people because, I am likely the only blind person that many people I meet have ever met, but I won't be the only one they've ever met. Eventually, they'll meet others, and the next experience they have, that'll just be a person who's blind. Not like, ooh, not somebody I'm afraid of, or, I have no idea what they could do, because now they know that person probably can do most anything.
Sylvia, can you talk about work-life balance?
I love that question. And as I said, I ran an agency for almost 11 years. And so, and then I've been in senior leadership positions for many, many years. Most of my career has been in senior, if not the CEO seat. And so oftentimes people think, well, when you're in that seat, there's no such a thing as work-life balance. I am all about work-life balance, and on rare exceptions, do I not just turn off my computer at that designated time, which for me is 4:30. I'm done. You get 100% of me during my work hours, and when work is done, I have a lot of hobbies. I have a lot of fun hobbies and people I want to spend time with, and so to be able to do that, I create that boundary. And I have also always required people who worked for me to do that as well. And that's when you get innovation, you get the creativity, because people got the chance to regenerate. They got and I want to tell you, my best ideas occur when I'm not working in my work hours. My best ideas occur when I'm doing something fun that then I can bring back to the work hour.
Can you share about some of your hobbies?
Well, let's see. I am an obsessive Fitbit person, but I'm not all about the 10,000 steps. I'm going to just be honest. I'm about the 7,500 steps a day. So sometimes you might find me marching around my house at 9 o'clock trying to get my last few steps in, which is funny.
Guilty.
It's fun, right? Yep. I do love to cook. And since we're just, here in the holidays, oh my gosh, it's like my heaven time for cooking. I picked up last year crocheting. So that's another great, fun hobby that I have. And I also really enjoy, beyond the Bold Blind Beauty podcast and content writing for them, I also love to teach public speaking. And so I teach a virtual public speaking program called Speak with Confidence that I developed with a couple other people in 2020. And so that's another fun thing I love. And then I volunteer, and I will say that I stay very busy but productive, and just I think it's so important for my own mental health, for my own well-being, to just have these like connections with people and these fun things that keep me just energized.
Can you take a minute and share contact information, whatever social media platforms you got going on?
Sure. So to contact me, my email is, the real easy one is Perez, which is SPEREZ @AFB.org. My social, I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, and I'm going to say I'm on Twitter, but I'm not too active on Twitter. So Facebook and LinkedIn, Sylvia Stinson Perez, which is STINSON-Perez, PEREZ, and Sylvia is SYLVIA.
Do you consider yourself a creative person, and how important is having a creative outlet?
I would say that, yes, I am a creative person. And by the way, I will say that I think that that's something you can cultivate that. It's not like something that you have to have innately. I might have that innate skill, but I think I've also really cultivated that creativity. And I will say that it has been especially important for me because, every day we're problem solving, right? Just living as a person with low vision or blindness, you are a problem solver. And so adding that creative side to you really is important because it allows you to become a better problem solver. But I think that I would also say that there are fun parts of my career. Like, we all know this. You have these fun things that you get to do, but there's also very detail-oriented parts that maybe aren't as fun. And so adding in these creative pieces has really allowed me to really be able to do the not so fun stuff all the time, because recognizing it's important, but always having that creative side to even add that piece to that detail work and having that things to look forward to. But I also find that the creativity is where I can express a little bit more and generate in myself more authenticity. I tell you, so on the podcast, and any podcast, that's a place where you have to be vulnerable for it to be really good. For it to be good, you've got to be vulnerable. And that's a scary thing. And, when I write content for Bold Blind Beauty as well, I love writing that blog post every month because I dig down deep in myself and try to find that authentic place, but in a creative way, because I want to really reach that somebody. I want to reach somebody with that message.
It's so important, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It really is. I was talking to my husband the other night because we were talking about teaching and making that connection with your students. Mm-hmm. And I said, they're not capable of learning unless they trust you. And, mm-hmm. there has to be a mutual trust.
Sylvia, do you work remotely? Are you having to travel for work? Is it a combination of both?
So I have to tell you, an amazing blessing for me was that last year, this time, oh my gosh, literally this day, a year ago, I moved back to my hometown in Florida. I literally live less than a mile from the house I grew up in. And I said I would never live here again. And then the opportunity came up. My husband and I were like, you know what? We're not loving where we are. Now there's this opportunity to work remote. I'm going to capitalize on that. And we moved back to my hometown where I have several family members, which has been just a wonderful thing to be able to be with them. And then we bought a house and I work remotely. Right now, I'm not traveling significantly, but eventually I'm sure I will be because my role at AFB as the Chief Programs Officer is to lead the employment initiatives. And our goal is going to be really to find ways to reduce the unemployment rate out there, to create a world of no limits.
I would really love your input on the advantages or disadvantages of working remotely.
I think that as people who are blind, we can capitalize on it because I have no transportation barriers now. And one of the other things that I've heard a number of people talk about is that even in the interviewing process, they have not had to disclose that they're blind because there was no need to. They had their technology right there. And now I am a big proponent of disclosing your blindness, because otherwise you probably are going to end up with some challenges down the line.
It's good to be honest in the beginning.
Yeah, you don't want to start
be
a
honest
working
in the beginning.
relationship
Right.
on an untruth.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just
But I think that there have been some people who are low vision who've truly been able to capitalize on these remote opportunities where it has no impact whatsoever. They're not going into the office, and so it has no impact. And the transportation issue is a huge one for people, especially those who live in rural areas where there is limited or no access to transportation besides, an individual who can drive you somewhere. So I think that that's a tremendous benefit. I think remote or virtual working is really a personality thing. There are people who are sighted, who are blind, who have other disabilities, who will excel at virtual and remote work, and those who will absolutely not. It's very much a personality thing. I like we talked about the boundaries, is that I have been now working almost 2 years remotely. I have maintained a very, a schedule. I start work on time. I finish work, at a certain time. I work that whole time. I have a designated workspace. So all of those best practices in remote and virtual work are critical, but I think it's really a personality issue. Do I miss being around people? Sometimes, but I have to say that I live on Zoom, Teams, Google Meet. I know them all now because I spend, and I will use the word excessive numbers of hours on those meeting platforms.
yeah, so you never really feel alone.
I don't feel alone because I can't even get any alone time.
Exactly. I'm always connecting with somebody.
Yeah. And in fact, I will say that I actually, in many ways, feel more connected because there is this greater connection that has been made. And I really applaud the consumer groups, NFB and ACB, who just made extraordinary efforts to create virtual opportunities for people. And I hope those don't go away because that's been extraordinary. And agencies have done that. Agencies for the blind have done that. And I think that's been extraordinary for people. And I made new friends, developed additional hobbies. I'm in 3 book clubs. I think another thing is that I hope that many people have come to understand the number of people that are experiencing social isolation, because now everyone's had a taste of it. And I hope that the world can take a step and say, we need to figure out a way to prevent that from happening to everyone.
So you meet somebody who's brand new to blindness and it's them and a family member. What would be the message that you would try to get across?
And I've had many experiences like that from the parent of a 6-week-old who brought their baby in who was blind. And it's really funny because just a couple of weeks ago, I was doing a presentation, and one of those parents who brought their 6-week-old in was on that presentation with their now 11-year-old daughter, who is excelling. And he said, I remember what you said. She's going to be fine. We're going to work together and she's going to be fine. You're going to see. And she is. She's a confident, intelligent, bright girl. And then I've worked with the older people who have gotten that diagnosis of, macular degeneration or something, who I think of one individual who his wife pulled up in the car with him in the car, and she didn't tell him where they were going. And she came in and she says, he won't get out of the car, but I'm referring him for services. And I had to go out there. And it was a hot July day. And I went out there and I talked to him. I walked out there with my cane. He's like, you can't help me. There's no way you can help me. And I said, well, here's just a few ways I could help you. I mean, you think about it, though. When a few weeks later, she says, I'm signing him up for class. And he eventually did come to class. And when he finished that class 6 weeks later, he thought he could never cook again, never do anything again. He was the primary cook of that meal. And I had him on a national webinar last year talking about that. And that was about, 8 years ago, talking about how life-changing that was for him. And so I would say that message is that life can go on, life does go on, and it's hard. I mean, every day we know it takes more energy, it takes more problems, it takes more creativity, it definitely takes more courage. But is it possible to live a full, happy, enjoyable, fulfilling, productive life? Absolutely.